Hi everyone, my name is Tamari and I'm the AstroFashionista. Welcome to my channel. On my channel, I talk all things astrology, spirituality, the mystical side of life. And today I'm super excited because I have a special guest on, someone who's like a second father to me, our family spiritual advisor, one of my dad's closest friends in the world, Imodoye Shabazz, who is a spiritual practitioner. And I'll let him kind of explain exactly what he does because I don't want to mess it up. But just to make the introduction and kind of tell you all why he's on the channel. When I was an infant, my dad had a naming ceremony, and I call him Imodoye because he's like a second father to me, facilitated my naming ceremony. And obviously I was there, but I don't remember it. And one of the things that he did for me was give me a natal chart reading. And obviously as an astrologer, hearing that story, that really like just warms my heart because it's almost like I was destined to kind of walk in his shoes, and I guess in his footsteps in some way. And I remember growing up, my dad always like, there were certain things from that naming ceremony that he kind of lived by. Like he never let me wear red because I was born under the sign of the bull. He wanted me to be more in yellows and bright uplifting colors. And I guess it was said that I was the second coming of my great grandmother, his grandmother, Cassie May. And he reminded me of this last week. And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Imodoye next week. I want to bring that up and kind of get into more of, how you conduct these naming ceremonies and how more of like how you got into astrology and Regla de Ocho, which we'll talk about. Other people, that's Santeria. So we're just going to make this kind of a casual conversation and talk all things spirituality. But Imodoye, tell me more about your journey and how you became the wise sage that you are. By the way, everyone, he's a Sagittarius. I want to just hear it from you because I want to hear, and you have so much wisdom. So let us know everything.
Well, trying to solve a lot of problems, a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
So sometimes getting into trouble can be the way out. It really all begins back where you started. And I grew up, first of all, with my grandparents. My parents moved in with my grandparents, and they built a room like upstairs in my grandparents' house, and they built a room on the back. And at that time, when I was coming along, we didn't even have running water inside the bathroom. Because in this small town environment, there was a lot of, I call it black love, really. Because that was during the time, that was before 1954. Mm-hmm. So that was during the time of segregation. A lot of times I use the metaphor of the seed and how important the seed period is, how important babies are, and how important it is to have the right relationship with your mother. This sets the tone for what I call the trust intelligence. If you didn't have that when you were small, you could either be unstable and always trying to get attention from other people or get trust from other people, or you could be a type of person who never trusts anybody, always doubting. That's going to influence your life no matter how much other intelligence you have in other areas. Lucky for me, even though I went through some rough times and I've been homeless before, I've been out of work, but because my grandmother had so much love for me when I was small, I always stayed positive. One thing I want to say when we talk about spirituality involves a lot of trust. And spirituality involves a lot of intuition. And so spirituality, by its very nature, calls for a lot of intimacy. Now, if you're a person who was not able to exercise your intimacy with anyone because of traumatic environment, because of an environment that was hostile in one way or another to you, then it's going to be hard for you to develop your spirituality in that way. You may develop intuition and spirituality, but it'll be geared to negative things.
Mm.
It won't be geared to positive things.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be hopeful. You're going to be doubtful. You're going to say this might happen, that might happen.
Yeah.
And I have been in environments with both types of people. The kind of greatest sexual activity among human beings is at the time of lowest mental ability.
Mm.
That is when you're more socially active, let's say from 18 to 35, okay? This is where the height, let's say up to 40, okay? During that time, your mind is not as clear as when you get over 40. I know this from experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just certain things you can't see through. You can't see the consequences of your actions. You act impulsively and you act in ways that are not going to be beneficial to you in the long run, but you can't see it at that time because your hormones have hijacked your mental ability.
Mm.
And during that time, you need someone on the outside of you that's going to help you to maintain your relationship in a positive way because you can't see all the things that you do. You don't really know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where grandparents and older people come in because they have the time. They're retired. They're not running after money every 5 minutes. And remember, money or survival or existence is only a preparatory step for you to get into what life is about. And life is about bringing quality to whatever activity you're involved in. That's what life is about. If you're not brought up with the kind of love, protection, security, when you're in your seed point, it's going to be hard for you to then blossom and really make spirituality a part of your way of life when you get older. It's going to be from a problematic point of view. And you're never going to get out of it. You're never going to get out of it until you can find a substitute grandmother, a substitute. That's what the whole godparents and all of that, someone leading you to God from the diasporan point of view, or your Oluo from the Icheshe or Nigeria point of view. That's what it's about. Having the right teacher means we don't understand the depths of that relationship between that teacher and that child is like a parent and a child. And more so, it's like a parent that you never had. Because a lot of times your parents were not able to give you certain things. And so you go to these spiritual teachers to get what you never got.
I was going to say that when it seems like people are constantly seeking others to get answers that are ultimately inside of them, where they have to see so many spiritual gurus, or they're talking to a priest or talking to an astrologer and a tarot card reader. And obviously as an astrologer, I'm here to help people, but I even notice that there's people that just notoriously come back and I'm like, well, did you do any of what I told you to do? Like my goal is for you not to have to come back to me. And I think that, ties back to what you're saying, really not having that foundation and that love and being nurtured the way you were supposed to. So you don't even trust yourself as an adult.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in a state of panic or you're in a state of crisis, it's hard for you to sit down and listen to yourself. You have to have someone else that can help mirror and reflect something higher than what you see yourself, because the only thing what you see in yourself is not on that level. Mm-hmm. So that's basically like what happened to me, is that I was able to begin to interact with my Cuban neighbors. Now, little did we know at that time, like when I came back from the Army in 1969, a group of Cuban people invited us to their house for a party. But I want to keep, especially people who don't have that background, to understand the reason why we could be receptive to that is because we all, the little group of us who were like playing drums together and doing things together, we had a big respect for our grandparents. We had a big respect for the women in our life. We had a big respect for family life and for children. When you see those elements, you can know that person is on the way to spiritual development. But people many times who are running after spiritual development, they fly over that. They don't know that, hey, if you sit down and go take care of that child, you might discover yourself. They're thinking that if I pay out these thousands of dollars and have this ritual done, that's just going to be a temporary solution. Because the cause of that pathology is still running. You just had it covered up for a minute.
Yeah.
It's still running. You haven't touched it. You haven't dealt with it. So me seeing my neighbors come down and ask for me, and at that time, it wasn't good manners for you to talk about what you had. It was good manners for you to talk about what you did for other people. You see Miss Hillman over there? Yeah, we got her roof fixed on her house. You see Mr. Johnson across the street? Yeah, we got his daughter into school. That's how people talked at that time. That was their value. So this reflected their values. This reflected, and this, to show you how strong this was, it was the foundation of those people who were born in the early 1900s and in the 1920s. You see Malcolm X, Martin Luther King were born in 1925. The people who were born during that era were the foundation of the people that came along in the 60s. They were the parents of the people who came along in the 60s. And these were the people who were the first generation to come from the South.
Yeah.
And my premise is it's Southern culture, background, and family structure that provided the basis for us to step into African spirituality. That was the bridge into African spirituality. So if you're trying to run to Nigeria to become a Nigerian, or run to Cuba to become a Cuban, or run to Brazil to become a Brazilian, or run anywhere to be anything other than yourself, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
You have to start with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's also what we were able to do when we sat down with our teachers. We told them clearly that what we want to do with what you teach us is to help to organize and structure our community. And that's what we set about to do, to name children, and which is a way of defining those children and helping to recognize who they are so they won't be so unrecognized to themselves. Because when you have a name or a term or a definition, that means you can define yourself and you can take a hold or grip on who you are.
Yeah. I love that you said that. Oh, I love everything that you said about values. I just had this conversation with my husband, Kofi, about value systems and, friend circles and how those relationships evolve. And sometimes you can be friends with people, but you don't have an understanding because your values are different. And I'm not in friendship. You can define friendship as, your close friends, your best friends. And I guess what I was trying to get around is that, I've always had a lot of friends and a lot of people in my life, but I can't say that everyone has the same values as me, because I don't value only material things. I love material things. I'm a Taurus, so I'm going to not say that. But my value systems are more rooted in my spiritual contentment, if that makes sense, like my inner peace.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
All of that. That's what I value. I value, providing a legacy for my future children, being educated, doing better than what my ancestors did because they paved the way for me. Those are the things I value. So if I have someone in my life that doesn't have the same value system and they only care about being the CEO of a company, which by the way, I plan to do that, but I don't value that much, then you're never going to see eye to eye. So I love that you brought in, the idea of values, because I literally just told Kofi I want to talk about values because that's where people, have, discontent. And then also the idea of like your name being something powerful. A name is not just a name. Like it's what
No,
people call you, but your name is almost like your identifier. It can be you can be similar to your roadmap or your astrology chart. Like if you have a name that actually, means something and your parents put thought into it. And so, can you tell me more about like what the idea of like a naming ceremony, what is involved and the concept behind that and why that's so much a part of African spirituality and African culture in general?
because African culture, uh, it was only the African environment that they had time to really observe what part they played within nature. In other parts of the earth, they were so busy trying to survive, they didn't have time to sit down and philosophize on what life was about because life was not really comfortable for them. It was harsh and it was always a struggle. And for the African, what was a struggle became a dance. They turned the struggle into a dance.
Mm-hmm.
So, like with the Yoruba people, which is the people that we met, and then along the way, other things began to happen within my family. My cousin married a gentleman, Adigun, who was from Lagos, Nigeria, and he was the one who married my oldest daughter, who was born in 1973.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was being exposed to all these people who were from Nigeria who were marrying different members of my family, and they were all sharing their cultural background with us, and we were adopting these things. So these things were not something that we left what we were doing and tried to become something else.
Mm-hmm.
What we ended up doing was seeing what they had to offer us, seeing how it fit in with what we were already doing.
Mm-hmm.
So like jumping the broom for us, which people brought that back, like that was part of slavery where people got married.
Mm-hmm.
To us, that was the Agbe Omojade, the day of bringing the wife into the house. Where you actually gave the newborn bride a broom and she swept the porches of her in-laws and they gave her a present. So it was connected to a whole institution. It wasn't just a singular event. So that's another thing that I say, what was a way of life became a movement for my older daughter and became events for my younger children because it was just something they experienced, but they didn't know what it was connected to. So all the things that we see, like your naming ceremony, that's connected to an elaborate process. We brought in astrology because at that time we were studying in the Black Gnostic Association that was going on that used to have Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and all these people speak at their building, and they had their books, and it was like one of the only Black bookstores in Los Angeles at that time. So we were studying with them, and they exposed us to astrology when we began to study astrology. This is back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So we studied astrology as a key for us to understand how nature, because all of this is about nature.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. If you get to God, you have to go through nature. This is the African way of thinking about things. You can't go to God abstract without going through nature. And nature has a logical, reasonable, or rational aspect, and it has an unrational or fantastic or miraculous aspect. And both those aspects fit together because just like water is boiled, becomes steam, before it gets to steam, it has to increase in degrees, then it changes form. And that is a symbol, that water is a symbol because we pray with water when we get up in the morning. And that water, when water hits the ground, it makes everything grow. No life can live without water. They say a prayer like that in Cuba. Of course, we have, as we exposed it to, our Nigerian family, they helped us to add to that prayer. They say, Omi tutu ile tutu ona We say, Mofi, tutu, see, letun, mean we put a few drops of cool water on our floor. Bobo araile mi tutu, so everyone here will be cool and refreshed. Okan wa tutu, so our hearts will be cool and refreshed. Ori wa tutu, so our heads will be cool and refreshed. Tutu for one more. Coolness for all the children. Ati bobo tia wasile mi, and everyone who comes to our house, may they be cool and refreshed. And then we institute Omi Tutu Ile Tutu. So that fact of water, we know that water not only makes things grow, water cleans things.
Mm-hmm.
And that water is a symbol of life itself.
Yeah.
So by us understanding, this is why during the time of your naming ceremony, they took water and put water in your mouth when you were a little baby. That's what happened, along with other elements. And each one of those elements represented a different characteristic of life you must master.
Mm.
And that you're here for a test, and you must rise to that occasion, and you must answer that test. But you had already been prepared at the time that you were conceived, because you survived in your mother's vaginal canal, and which is an acid base. You're able to swim against the force of gravity, and you were able to outstrip 250,000 other seeds that were trying to get to that one egg. Wow. And you were the one that was born and the others weren't. So you overcame those odds of 250,000 to one, and you're that one. Yeah. So if you do that, that means that you can do that. Just like you did that in your mother's room when you were born out of that mother's room, you can do that again. This is what the initiatory process is. It's all about rebirth. Yeah. This is what it's all about. You know, so we want to really show the forest, not just the trees, because people are focusing in on the trees and specific tools that you use or specific techniques. Well, they use these techniques over here and they don't use them over there. This tradition is an organic tradition. What does that mean? It means that it's not standardized. It must be fit to each individual person, because each individual person, in our belief, you're already born with the destiny. No one has to save you to bring you to. Now, you should be awakened, but no one has to save you. You're already saved. You just have to become aware of what you have been given, your God-given right, and use that God-given right. Yeah. That's what you must do. So no one has to save anybody. If I go, and this is the thing to understand about this tradition, is if you go to Cuba, they're going to do it one way. If you go to Nigeria, in different places, they're going to do it different ways in different places. You go to Brazil, they're going to do it another way. I say all of those ways are right.
So, Baba, I don't think we defined the tradition that you're using, just in layman terms for people, because it's Ifa, but it's, I mean, they're all connected, right?
Oh,
so
yeah, they're all connected. Now, when we talk about Santeria, which is a pejorative term, however, it was a popular term because people were trying to get the respect of the larger community that were Catholics. Yeah. So to call themselves Santeros was positive for them at that time. They came out of Rule de Ocho, means Orisha, the rule of the Orishas. This was a pact that was made in the early 1900s. After the end of what we call the Spanish-American War. Why do I know about that war? My grandfather, Ernest Lay, was the last African-American veteran who fought in that war to pass, died. Wow. My grandfather. Wow. And he used to talk to me about Cuba when I was 3 years old. So I knew about Cuba when people weren't even thinking about Cuba. Because he fought in Cuba. And after that war took place, there was a great fear that Cuba would become another Haiti. The great fear of all the European powers was of Haiti, because Haiti defeated the French, the English, the Spanish, and all the rest of them to gain their independence. And they thought Cuba would go the same way. But after the end of that Spanish-American War, all of the priests got together and they reformed the religion, and they called it Regla de Ocho. And during that time, that's when you received more than one lecky. I have one lecky on that's to Ifa, but when you go through your Regla de Ocho, and I was a part of Regla de Ocho, I was initiated into the lower levels of what they call Alegio and Aborisha of Regla de Ocho, worship of Orisha. And in Regla de Ocho, you get 5 electis, and each one of those electis stand for a particular Orisha. But in Nigeria, you only get one at a time. You don't get 5 all at the same time. In Cuba, they felt they were going to lose, so they wanted to give people all 5 to try to save the tradition as a whole. That's why they created that. So when people criticize something, they have to know the history, because it was the Cubans that brought African tradition in a organized form into this country. There were people practicing African tradition. As a matter of fact, people think that we lost all our African tradition. No, our African tradition wasn't lost. It was just hidden.
Yeah.
You'd have to go down to your corner lodge or Eastern Star building and see all the African things that they're doing. So we really don't, because we don't know what African tradition is, we don't realize it. And they took an oath not to spread it, not to teach it out in the public.
Yeah.
So we were under the misconception that we lost all our African tradition and we have to go here, go there to get it. No, you have to get together with those older people. It's those older people who are the book. It's the older people who are the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's the same for Cuba. It's the same for Nigeria. People are writing things down now. That's good, but it's not enough, because the power or the blessing that you get from people who do this work is from having the blessing of their word itself, not through writing it down and giving it to you in a written word.
Yeah. A lot of it is speaking and talking directly to, I guess it would be the Orishas, or, and my husband's a part of the Akan tradition. So, it's a lot of talking directly, not only to your ancestors, but telling them exactly what you want and using the language, learning the language. And that's what culture is. Culture, religion is a part of culture, right? I think we've had this conversation in the
religion
past.
is a part of culture.
Yeah. So it's the language, it's the food you eat, it's the music you listen to, it's all of that. You can't separate them. And so when my understanding of African spirituality is more of the culture, the religion is just a part of it. And that's super important. You can't just write that in a book. You have to live a certain way.
Everything that Africa is religious. There was not, when you go to cut a potato, it's a particular Orisha that's involved. It's just you're not calling on that Orisha to do this or do that. If you go to brush your hair, it's an Orisha that's involved. Everything you do, it's an Orisha that's involved. Now, the thing is, the Orisha is not only on what I call a more surface level, or Beyonce and this kind of thing. Orisha is on the level of energy and laws. Energy and laws. That's where Orisha really is.
Mhm.
And you must open your inner eyes so you can sense this energy
Mm.
and you can study and know these laws.
Mhm.
So you can go into a person's house and guess what? It's nothing there.
Mhm.
They've paid out a lot of money. I wouldn't tell them that, but it's nothing there.
Mhm.
Because that energy that's supposed to be personifying is not there.
Mhm.
The question becomes, how can you develop yourself so you know the difference?
Mm. Mhm.
Not based on what somebody tells you. Because the essence of this tradition, the essence of this is a knowing tradition. Ifa is a knowing tradition. It's not a belief. People want to make it into a religion, a dogma, a standardized way of doing it. You're not doing it right, you're supposed to do it this way, do it that way. The question comes, does it work?
Mhm.
Does it work?
Yeah.
And the other question that comes in is, you're living a balanced life. Guess what? You're not going to have to do as much work.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
You're living a balanced life because the high priest are teaching their families not to get into problems. While you, the client, only come to them when you have a problem.
Mhm.
When my teacher comes in town, I go by and see him just
Mhm.
because that's how I was conditioned. I'll give him a donation. I would say, give this donation is for you. This donation is for the women in your village who may not have a husband. And this donation is for the children. And this donation is for the Orishas, for any kind of rituals you have to do.
Mhm.
But I'm doing that to him. I haven't been directed through ritual to do that. I've only been directed from my heart.
Yeah.
And when I go in to see what they're telling me, I knew a lady, a Cuban lady, she and her husband and I were very close for many years when I used to go to New York for many years. Her name was Adelma. She only had to do a ritual sacrifice once every 5 years. Every time she would go to the shrine and ask them what they want, they say, nothing,
Mm.
nothing. And I said, Adelma, why is that so? And I see people doing all of this and all of that, and they're doing elaborate. She said, because I live a disciplined life,
Mhm.
and they don't.
Yeah.
So they have to always be cleaning themselves, always make atonement, and I don't. Because I make my atonement as soon as I get up in the morning, I make my atonement. And I don't have to
Yeah.
wait for someone to force me to do it.
Yeah.
So this is another thing to keep in your mind, to have the pursuit of happiness, or do you just want to keep from being sick?
Yeah.
If you just want to keep from being sick, then yes, you need to learn more rituals.
Mhm.
I learned to listen.
Mhm.
I learned to feel. It takes a lot of preparation to enter in this tradition because the people who do best in this tradition is people who can see and hear more than what they see and hear, and not
Mm.
people who just try to memorize information and throw it out at people and get attention.
Yeah.
This is
And I
not a
guess
dogma.
I think that's a good point because I guess that can be applied to any spiritual system. It's about authenticity and not putting on a show. Like I feel like that happens probably in every spiritual system. whether Christianity a lot, we know, Catholicism, I'm sure in every, church
No,
or,
every does, but
there's just, so it's not about, appearing, it's about really believing. And I think this is why false prophets is so easy for people to fall. I'm just thinking about this now and follow a false prophet because they're don't even know themselves. So they're following a false narrative and so they can't see the truth. So they're following a false prophet, whether it's when you're someone that's spiritually aligned and you're living your life, you know yourself, you know your journey, you know where you're going, you can spot a false prophet immediately. And so you know not to follow it. And so people, it's all about authenticity. So when you're not authentic, you're going to attract people that aren't authentic. But when you're authentic, you're going to attract the authentic, spiritual leaders, I guess is what I would call it. So that's an interesting.
It's hard for you to
thing.
do that because you must search until you find something within yourself that you know is true.
Yeah.
And when you find that, you might be sitting down at the beach by yourself.
Mm-hmm. But Baba, do you think that I think you talked about, trauma and people, or it's not, I guess not trauma, but maybe not having like the nurturing that you needed or the foundation in some way being shooken up when you were younger. But I also feel like that can be a catalyst for putting you on the right path as well. And maybe it's a mixture of both because my family background, how I lost my mother. And that to me was like obviously a major life shakeup, but my foundation was so strong before then with my dad and my mom, both, and my grandparents. So that event actually led me more to my journey. Like that, if that wouldn't have happened, I can't say I wouldn't have become who I am, but that was such a big event in my life. I was able to walk my path sooner than I probably would have maybe. So I think, sometimes the trauma and the, a lot of people seek spiritual knowledge or spiritual, you know, they just seek that kind of side of life when they experience something hard, when they experience a hardship. But how they come out on the other side, I guess, does have to do with the foundation, maybe.
Well, it does. It does. I feel it does. That's what I feel within my case and my situation. Because I can reflect back on that love that I got from my grandparents. And that allowed me to have like a compass to judge other people. I could see through other people. I could see people who were really well-intentioned and people who weren't.
Yeah.
And your intention is your first tool you have to develop in order to become spiritually developed. It's your intention. Yeah. When you don't know anything, say, well, I don't know. How can I know this guy? No, you can't know what they know. They have like years and years more experience than you. But one thing you do have at your disposal is your intention. And with that proper intention or true intention or valued intention, when you have the proper intention, that itself is going to put your mind on a certain type of track. And that's going to allow you to differentiate between those who have intention and those who have an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
And they'll know more than you, but if you're a spiritual person, you'll understand that it's more than knowledge. It's knowledge and spirit. We don't follow just knowledge. It's a lot of people have more knowledge than you. Even wicked people have knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh, no, but I have to follow him because he has that knowledge. No. First, you have to find out where you fit in with the spirit and whether his or her spirit is the kind of spirit that is in harmony with your spirit and can help to elevate you through the interaction. If you don't figure that out first, you'll just be a believer and you'll never be a knower.
And people leave the spirit out of spirituality. Like, it's about inner work. It's not about outwork. That spirit is here. And they leave
That's
that
right.
part out, and they look for it outward. So that's so key. I don't know if I ever thought about it that way, but
Yeah, we all look for that, because the outward is where the security is. When we're insecure outwardly.
Yeah.
So you have to go beyond security to go to life. Life is not security.
Mm-hmm.
And people who go for initiation, the initiation is really to help you face your fears. That's really all. No matter how elaborate the initiation is help you to overcome your fears. So if the person's being false, if the person is not being truthful, if the person has ulterior motives, that means that they didn't get the most out of their initiation. Because the initiation is supposed to prepare you to deal with anything you fear. You fear Black people? Oh, well, then you need to go back and go back to the initiation. You fear white people? You need to go back. You fear Hispanic people? Or you fear Asian people? Then you need to go back and deal with your initiation, because you still have fear. And then there's other levels of fear of death, fear of sickness, fear of loss of money. There's all different types of fears. And initiation is to help you to face those fears and go through those fears so you can transcend those fears.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. It's not about anything. I'm not giving out any, because you have that which is hidden and that which is secret. Nature, a part of nature is revealed and a part of nature is hidden. But it's not secret.
Yeah.
It's just, if you study it, you'll know about it. If you don't study it, you won't know about it. So a lot of things that have been part of different cultures and things like that, once you understand the symbology of what you're dealing with, and a lot of that is brought out in astrology. I'm not saying astrology is the same as, because we only have the earth to deal with.
Yeah.
It's just people don't look at the earth. They've turned these disciplines into self-aggrandizement. They've turned these disciplines into ways to make themselves big. But the true initiate can say, I don't know. Why can they say, I don't know? Because they know it's more they don't know than they do know, no matter how much they do know. That's first. Second, they know that, hey, this earth, I don't control this earth. I'm part of this earth to play my part.
Yeah.
But most people are trying to dominate and control. They can be safe. Is to dominate. Well, the only way we're going to be safe is if we get them before they get us.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And that's not being in flow, and that's not trusting the process. Because going back to your point about nature and how nature is a part of African spirituality, and that's all it is, because nature is about cycles. And so if nature is about cycles, life is about cycles, and you can't always be on top. You won't always have good times. They'll be followed by difficult periods. And I think once you learn to embrace that, life becomes easier. So you don't ever equate something as negative or positive, which is what I try to move in that way. I'm not perfect, but I try to remind myself of that, because I never want to get too excited about anything in my life, because I'm like, float, ride the wave, because that's what life is. That's what nature is about. And it almost
can quote Baba Mathua Care. When things are good, they only half that good, and when things are bad, they only half that bad.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's very Libra of my dad to say. Very Libra of him. He's a very even-keeled person. Maybe that's where I get it from.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So avoid the peaks and the valleys. good, they're only half that good. When things are bad, they're only half that bad. What would you fix it about?
Yeah.
Stay balanced.
Stay balanced.
That's
Yeah.
right. Stay balanced. When you stay balanced, then you don't have to deal so much with the pathologies.
Yeah. That's so true. And you know that nothing is permanent.
Nothing is permanent. Everything is always changing.
Yeah.
So this is an organic religious tradition. I won't even call it religion. I call it spiritual science that has different disciplines. They offer you different disciplines depending upon what you need for your incarnation. But each person is born needing different things. Everybody doesn't need the same thing in order to grow. Even though people say, well, you need to be saved. Well, yes, but I need particular things because of the time that I was born and when I was born. You need other things.
Yes, yes. It's so much bigger than just symbols on a chart. Like people look at this chart and it's this two-dimensional thing that I think people get connected to reading, but really it's a representation of what you see in the sky and what the conditions of what was happening when you were born. And so that's where the planets were. That's the way they were reacting to it. But we could even go deeper and look at the weather on that day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that, we could look at that and see what were the conditions. What were the conditions that your mother in the hospital, like all those things I feel like just probably influence your path in life. And that's why I love those little stories of people's births that they say, like, you know, like my grandpa used to say, I think 60 Minutes was coming on, but maybe the Cosby Show or something was going on. Like just those little things might give you insight into someone's personality and maybe what they're here to do, because nothing's coincidental. If you believe that nothing's coincidental. So all those conditions influence your path, and that's the key to unlocking your future. And people always want to know the future when they come see an astrologer or someone, but it's more about you. It's not about the future. It was already written, you know, in a way. You're just you're co-creating the story.
You're co-creating the story, and ironically enough, you're repeating the same story.
Yeah.
The thing is, how can you stop repeating the same old story?
Yeah.
Get on to a new story and transcend.
Yeah, transcend.
That's what it's really all about.
I love that. You're transcending your birth chart in a way.
You have to transcend. So what is horary astrology or horary? Horary astrology.
Yeah, and that's when you're using a certain it's a way of prediction. It's a way of
prediction, right?
Prediction, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the same thing they're doing when they are casting shells or anything like that. It's what's happening in this time, what the person needs to do in this time. But we want to hold that in, like put that in a gold or a steel plate and just hold it in place, rather than see it as part of a continuum.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't want to see the bigger picture. If all the animals, the insects, the birds pass, humans cannot. But if humans leave the earth goes on living.
Yeah.
So do we need them or they need us?
That's true. That's
if all the fish die, we're on the way out.
Yeah.
But we're taking them for granted because they're on a lower level than us.
Yes.
It's not about levels. It's about how you fit in and what. It's not about that comparison. Comparison is coming out of the dualistic mind.
Mm-hmm.
Either or. So you're getting a sense of who you are by comparing yourself with somebody else.
Yeah.
You're not getting a sense of who you are based on who you are.
Yeah.
So comparison always leads to envy. Envy leads to jealousy. Jealousy leads to hatred. Hatred leads to contention, struggle, war. It's all starting with comparison and judgment.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to judge anything.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
I
whole
think
thing.
that's the danger of the time that we live in now, because it's never been so easy to compare when everyone's life is being shared. And it's almost like humanity is getting challenged in some way to the technology is progressing in a way that's helping us, but it's also killing us.
Oh, yeah. Well, for every technological step, maintain balance. So at one time, you used to walk 10 miles with a bucket of water on your head. So while you were walking that 10 miles with a bucket of water on your head, you had to hold your back up straight. You had to keep balanced.
Mm-hmm.
So physically, it was difficult for you, but it still helped to keep your body in. So now you no longer do that. Not only
Yeah.
that, then you no longer have to go down there. Now the water comes directly to your home. So socially, you're no longer connected to the same thing. And individually, your body is actually breaking down because you no longer have regular exercise.
Yeah.
So in order to take on these new, you must bring in a spiritual dimension, and you must compensate for the physical body of the human to be able to adjust itself to a new environment of you not walking enough. So you're sitting in your car every day and you're driving long miles. You're decaying your body just all the sitting. But
Yeah.
you're able to rationalize it because you're getting paid.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that.
So we're almost like a lion in a cage. We're coming up on hind legs, and we jump into a fiery hoop, and then they throw us a steak. But we don't have to go out and hunt for these animals. So therefore, those internal senses that we talk about, those senses of knowing, because the knowing we know from our five senses are really partial.
Mm-hmm.
They're only for immediate survival.
Mm-hmm.
So you look up in the morning, you tell me, well, I just read here that the sun is rising. No, the sun is not rising. The earth is revolving around the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
only the light that's hitting a certain aspect of the earth's surface that creates an optical illusion, not illusion, but illusion,
Mm-hmm.
that the sun is actually rising and the sun is not rising.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is actually standing still and we're revolving around the sun all at that same time.
Yeah.
So if you go just by the five senses, you cannot know the total truth. You can only know a partial bit of the truth.
Yeah.
If you're going by that. So if you're saying that this Orisha or whatever is this or is that, you're only seeing an aspect of it.
Yeah.
The sun is not rising, you're revolving around the sun. That's what's happening.
So then it's more of like that's where your sixth sense come in, your third eye, right? Like just
Your third eye, and also your ability to be able to calculate and study to know a particular law. How does a heavy metal boat float on water?
Mm.
When you can put a piece of metal in your tub and it goes down to the bottom.
Mm.
So these are all laws of
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just within our religious structure, we're still in the village structure and the house structure. And then we went into the business structure,
Mm-hmm. using
using our religion to make money and things like that.
Yeah.
But basically, the people who are still living the laws of Ocha, so to speak, or Isheshe, are the people in the villages who use that for their everyday survival, not just to give a reading, but actually to survive.
Yeah.
It becomes
Yeah.
like that.
Because that's basically where, if you think about anything, even going back to Kemet, everything that surround them was based on their geography. It's
Exactly.
it's nature. It goes back to you what you said about nature, and Even, you know, all the deities and everything is connected to that. There's not, you can't, it makes up the whole, you know what I mean? So you can't cut one part off. Yeah, that's the super important. That's nature.
So the deities are really energy.
Yeah.
But don't you have a table of energy or table of elements, as they say?
Yeah.
When you can put together 2 parts of hydrogen and a part of oxygen and create a liquid, 2 gases and create a liquid, does that seem possible? If you take it on the surface level, it wouldn't seem possible, but if you know the laws, you know it is possible.
Yeah.
But we're not being taught the laws. We're being taught to worship the face of the law.
Yes.
The image of as it was manifested in the village, where people had developed internal senses, and they then developed the ability to know what was going on inside. We talked about, again, reading people's intention. You had people that could do this to the max. They could read other people's intention, as they say, reading. But it's not reading that we really, it's not more readings that we need. We need another type of culture at this point.
Yeah.
That will incorporate benefits of the technological, but be balanced with the spiritual.
Yes. Yeah. I do feel like there's a little bit of hope that there is. I think we're going to eventually move to that. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up across all cultures, and obviously the sharing information helps with that. And people are tired. You know, I think a lot of people are realizing this way of wake up, work, chase the dollar bill, go to sleep, do it all over again, doesn't work. You know, and it leaves you feeling empty and unfulfilled. And so because we have all these technology and we have all these things at our fingertips, it really promotes laziness. And
well,
after
the
a while,
technology created an illusion that we didn't have to be inclusive.
Yeah.
Technology created an illusion like bars around your house that you didn't need anybody else. You could survive without, I can survive by myself. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You need people more than ever.
Yeah.
But you need the right people. So a healing and a correction. This is where we're at this point. And African traditions are really, in terms of the public, I have no public face. Because remember, I told you it was practiced in people's homes. It was never brought out like that and put out. Yeah, you might have a parade here and this and that, but it wasn't structured that way. It grew up organically from people that lived in homes and who developed trust and who developed faith through seeing little miracles done in their everyday way of life. And then carried this, and then this, what we call Ifa, if you will, was integrated into their way of life. It wasn't set aside as a set doctrine that people applied that way. Yes, there were people that were skilled and who knew more than others. But in terms of Ifa as a lifestyle, it was part of the culture as a whole. And that makes a big difference. It wasn't set apart. It was integrated into the whole. So your aunt could give you a blessing. Your grandmother could give you a blessing. Your grandfather could give you a blessing. You had people all around you to help you fulfill what you came here to do, because all of them were there at the time of your birth. They're very much interested in how you're going to come out and what you were born and what names you were given and how those names are going to manifest. So they have an interest in that. You're a reflection of them too.
So when you do a naming ceremony, are you divining? Can you just let people that have no connection to this, like, know what the process is in terms of like how the name or how you came to say what you had to say about the person? Because I know you read my birth chart, but what about the other things that you saw, like me being the second coming of my great grandmother, or
Well,
like
because
where do those things come from?
because the astrological chart was just one thing that was done in your particular case, not in everybody's case of a naming ceremony.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
don't know why it was done for you, but evidently it was for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the other part of it, because usually they come in and they either do an EPA reading or they do a cowrie shell reading for the baby to find out what is the particular sign that there are, an Odu, as they say, that they're born under. And within that Odu is a lot of information that tells you where that person is being born in that cycle and why they're being born. They take down the names, so you have more than one name because you have more than one aspect to your character.
Yeah.
Now, this naming ceremony within the Cuban situation, that's not what happens. They go to the church and get a blessing and get a name from the church. And only once they begin to go initiated, at the time of initiation, they're usually much older, then they will get an Orisha name, as they call it. But to a person who's born in traditional culture, like if they were born with the cord around their neck, they will get a particular name from that. I call those names are like titles.
Yeah.
If they're born in the mother sac did not burst, they call it behind the veil. People in the South, you get a name for that. If you're born like of twins, you get a name for that. Then you have a name that you're given on the conditions that surround your family. If certain conditions are surrounding your family, you'll get a name for that. If you're born in a certain birth order or during a certain festival, you'll get a name for that. So you get these names that's going to define all aspects of who you are. And that part, that investigation, that spiritual investigation, most important part of the naming ceremony. The ceremony is just a celebration.
Yeah.
And the ceremony is basically the same for everyone. They have elements laid out on the table. They pray to those elements. They give a little bit to everybody, and then they have a big party. But that investigation is the most important investigation that a person gets until they make a choice, or they're chosen to be, until they're chosen to then take on a commitment, to interact consciously with the forces of nature, or as we call them, Orisha.
Which is energy.
Which is energy.
Energy.
But
And
that energy, in African thinking, I can submerge myself into that energy to a point that I will be remembered for the things I do. Though I'm not energy, though I can take on this energy to perform a particular task.
Yeah.
And I will be remembered for that, and they will call me an Orisha. So there's 5 different categories of Orisha. Category of
That reminds me of what you were saying about, you know, before you're like age 35, how you can't see yourself, or you keep making these mistakes, and you need that older influence. And that, when you were saying that, it was reminding me of, you know, Saturn, planet Saturn matures after 30 and really after 35. And so Saturnian people in your life are the people that are there to discipline you, are the people there to teach you, you know, lessons. And it can represent your father, and, you know, anywhere that it is in your chart can be where you're supposed to learn the most lessons, or where you're supposed to mature. And it had me thinking about that energy. You know, you're not ready to take that energy on yourself until maybe you're after 35 years old. And then you're able to really see yourself and make your own transition or your own journey to becoming an elder after that. You're learning the lessons so that the cycle continues, and then you become that Saturnian person for the younger people. And that's just kind of was thinking, going through my head as you were kind of talking about that. So that was interesting.
Right. This is like the rite of passage.
Yeah.
Culture that's been like in disuse or ignored. Because those marks of those every 7 years are marked off by a ceremonial rite to remind a person that they have things they must accomplish to move on to the next level, and not take it for granted.
Yeah. And those 7 years are connected to the Saturn cycle too.
Right.
You know, when it's going to square your chart in certain ages, and your Saturn return age 28.
So everybody goes through a rite of passage.
Yeah.
You have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you can advance in this learning system.
Yeah. And there's levels. There's literally.
Of course, there are levels. Some of the levels are hierarchical levels, like you start off as an Aleyo, you go to an Aberisha where you just worship, then you can become an Olorisha where you actually transact with the Orisha and do work for other people yourself in a more conscious way. Then you can go into Ifa. And if you go over to Nigeria, it's going to be a little bit different process than it is in Cuba or it is in Brazil. But you want to learn as much as you. If you're in a particular system, try to learn the system, because remember, it's the driver of the car that determines how well the car is going to perform.
Yeah. And I know we've been talking for a long time. We could probably talk for hours about this. But to close it out, I think what you just said just prompted something for me. So you were talking about the rules and how people are always saying, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. But when you think about, we talk about how religion is really culture. So if you're practicing something in a different environment, that is going to change. So if you're in the United States practicing Ifa, it's going to look different than if you're practicing it. No matter how you can have whatever idea you think about whether it's pure or not, or if you're doing it right, but you still have the foundation of the practice. You're just doing it and adjusting it to where you are in your life. And to me, it's the intention, like you were saying, that's important. It's not the outcome. So I don't know, that just, it kind of tied everything together for me when you were just saying that. Because I think it's easy to be judgmental. And we didn't even get into, African Americans versus Africans and the lack of unification. That's going to be a whole nother topic.
That's another whole topic. I've seen it all, but I've been lucky enough to skip all of it.
Yeah, oh, good. Yeah.
But I will leave you with this, and this is what I always say. A priest or priestess is somebody who can swallow the tears of other people and turn those tears into water.
Into water of what?
Joy.
Water of joy.
A priest or priestess is someone who can swallow the tears of other people and turn their tears into water of joy.
That's good.
Yes, money is necessary, but there's something beyond the money.
Yeah.
You have to have the heart. You got to have the right intention.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Baba. I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I know there was a lot of gems here, a lot of jewels dropped, and I hope some people that are watching can be inspired and take that on their journey. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.